Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geek Report, your look at everything from movies and games to TV and anime.
Hey everyone, hope everyone's doing good. Hope you all are doing happy, doing blessed, doing safe, and doing well. Welcome to your Geek Report for the week of March 31st through April 7th of 2025. We've got a few news items to talk about, so let's get started. We're going to start off in our TV and movie news update, and we're going to talk about the first official trailer for Tron Ares. This is not a teaser, this is a proper trailer that really gives us a look at what to expect out of this third film in the Tron series. Then we move on to Star Wars, and we got a new trailer for Tales of the Underworld. This is going to be a series of shorts that detail the bounty hunters and basically the criminal organizations of the Star Wars universe. And it's going to be done in a similar style as to Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi. Then we end our TV and movie news with some sad news that Val Kilmer has died. Doc Holliday, everyone knew him as Doc Holliday from the Tombstone movie. Everyone knew him as Iceman from Top Gun. Heck, there's probably a few people who probably remember him from Pure Genius. He has died. He died from pneumonia, and we're just going to kind of take a look at his legacy. Then we move on to our gaming news, and it's all Nintendo news this month. All Nintendo news. We got some news about a new Metroid Prime 4 Beyond trailer. All right. We got a look at it, and we took a look at that. Then, first off, we got a new trailer for Hyrule Age of Imprisonment. Then we got some announcements for Project 007 and a Cyberpunk 2077 coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. And then we got an official release date for the Switch 2, which will be June 5th of 2025. But on top of all that, we got news that at least one of the games will cost $80. And I kind of talked about all this and just gave you my overall opinion and thoughts on it. So sit back, relax, grab yourself something to eat, grab yourself something to drink, and let's look at the Geek Report for the week of March 31st through April 7th of 2025.
Our first segment tonight is our movie and TV news segment.
So let's start our movie and TV news for this week with a trailer. And it's kind of a big trailer. And that trailer is, of course, Tron Ares. Now, if you don't know about the Tron series, let me kind of take you back to 1982. We had the story of Kevin Flynn, an ordinary computer programmer who got sent into the digital world to fight an evil program. Okay? Then 2010 rolls around and we get Tron Legacy, which is basically Kevin's son Sam goes into the digital world, which is what they call the grid. They call it the grid. But it's basically the digital world to save his dad Sam, who got trapped in the digital world by an evil program called Clue. Now we got Tron Ares. And this is supposed to take place sometime after the events of Tron Legacy. And it's supposed to talk about a computer program named Ares that was designed for fighting, somehow getting into the real world and basically wreaking havoc. Now, the big question I have about Tron Ares is how is Legacy going to affect Ares? Because at the end of Legacy, a couple of things happened. You had Sam coming back into the real world, taking over the company his father started, but had grown since his father went into the grid, but also bringing with him a computer program named Cora and basically making her real. Okay. You also had Kevin Flynn dying. Okay. But I'm going to get to this later on. We never saw the body. We just saw Kevin Flynn explode as Clue was reabsorbed back into him. Okay. So let's take a look at Tron Ares. And as the trailer plays, I'm going to give you some of my thoughts and opinions on this trailer. Now, these right here were light cycles, okay? These were both big in the first Tron movie and then the sequel, Tron Legacy, Okay. These were basically like gladiatorial bikes. Okay. Where they would fight them in the gladiatorial arena in both Legacy and the original Tron. Okay. So to see them in the real world tells me already that some of the tech from the digital world that they had will be allowed to come into the real world and will actually make its way into the real world. Not just people, but technology as well. And that right there is so cool. Seeing the light cycle shoot out its light wall and just slicing a car in half in the real world, so cool. Now, that right there, Jared Leto's voiceover saying, I'm looking for something. I have to wonder if he ain't perhaps talking about Cora. Okay. Because in Legacy, Kevin Flynn's son Sam came onto the grid, the digital world, to save his dad. He got help from a friend named Cora, okay, and they got close, okay. And at the end of the movie, Kevin died, and Sam took Cora out of the digital world and brought her into the real world, okay. So I'm kind of wondering, if Legacy is affecting what happens in Ares, okay, if perhaps what he ain't looking for is Cora. And it's coming out this October, which I think is a really good time. Okay, it's a really good time to bring this out because it's Halloween and it's that time of not just scary stuff but also imagination. So I think that is a really good time for it. And plus, really, when you think about it, all right, they don't have to compete against Ballerina, which I think is going to be a huge summer hit this year. Okay. By the time October rolls around, Ballerina would have been out for at least a month over. Okay. So, yeah, I think October is a great time to bring it out. Now, this right here is obviously the digital world. Okay. And what you're seeing here is the digital world is basically gearing up for war, it looks like. You've got over here all these ships that look like they're carrying supplies to what it looks like a dockyard of some sort. Okay. So the question is, how did they get to the real world? I think that's going to be a question that's going to be answered in the movie. But like, yeah, I think in this scene, you're seeing the digital world, and you could tell by all the red that these are the evil programs or viruses or whatever you want to call them. That in the digital world is basically gearing up for war with the real world. Now, this right here is a very particular scene I want to talk about. So you see the red bicycle or the red hover bike. Okay, I call it a bicycle, but it's a hover bike. Now, I had to look real close, but if you look right here, okay, you see a guy in red and you see a guy in white. Now, in the Tron movies, the red it always indicated evil, and that when someone changed sides, their light would change from red to white. Okay, so right here, you see someone colored by white riding behind someone colored in red. I'm having to wonder if somehow that is not Sam Flynn. Okay, and is that Ares? I'm just kind of curious about that. Okay, I'm wondering about that. Now, it's been 15 years since we saw Tron Legacy. Tron Legacy came out in 2010. Okay, So this is in all possibility that this could also be Sam and Cora's son. Okay, because it doesn't really show it all that good whether or not, like, if that's an adult or if that's a teenager. But this could in all possibility be Cora's son. Okay, Sam and Cora's son. All right. And as you can see there, they've created a new machine, a hover bike. We didn't really get the hover bikes in Legacy or the original Tron. Okay. But yeah, you see the hover bike going, well, it looks like going across water. But I'm just kind of wondering, who's this? Now, this could just be some ordinary character who found himself on the grid to try and stop Ares. Okay. Or this could be related to Sam and Cora. Okay. We, you know, I don't think we're going to really find out till the movie. But yeah, whoever this is, he ain't a part of Ares' army or that army that's going on behind them. Now I want to go back here for a second. Okay, I want you to see this scene right here for a second. So thinking back to Tron Legacy, all right, one of the big things about Tron Legacy was the portal and the key. Now, Kevin Flynn had the key, okay? He lost it in order to seal the portal so that way the evil program Clue could not cross over and try to instill his perfect idea for humanity, okay? Clue sends a message to Sam, Kevin's son, luring him into the grid, okay? And basically reopening the portal for a short time so that way he could try to transverse it. But he still needed the key. Now, at the end of Legacy, Sam took the key with him in order to take him and Cora into the real world, okay? Thus trapping Kevin with Clue and eventually leading to Kevin sacrificing himself to stop Clue, okay? But now you see in this scene the same light that was the portal. So the question then comes out, how did they reopen the portal without the key? Because you needed the key to reopen the portal. Okay. So how did they do it? If they did it, remember, Sam owned a big tech company. Kevin started the tech company and Sam took control of it. What if they found out about Cora somehow and somehow used her to reopen the portal? Okay. Like I said before, a lot of stuff is going to depend on whether or not they're going to take legacy into account and how they're going to take it into account. Okay. But yeah, like I'm kind of wondering about this also because this also can indicate that Kevin survived. Now, true, he didn't have the key with him. Okay. Remember, he gave it to his son Sam and Cora so that way they could escape the grid. But Kevin was a user. If he survived, could Ares or some program have forced him to create some type of workaround of the key to where they could open the portal, okay? And that's how Ares comes into the real world and stuff. Okay. There's a lot of stuff going on in here, but it also raises more questions about how they're going to take legacy into account, how they're even going to take the original Tron into account. Now, this right here is real interesting because it shows the disintegration of a program, but it's happening in the real world. So that means that disintegrations can happen, de-resing is what they call it. Basically, de-resing in the real world. One thing I really like is the way they brought that logo in. It really gave it a real cyberpunk feel. So I'm kind of wondering if perhaps Cyberpunk 2077 didn't play a part in that. And there you got October 10th, 2025 for the release of Tron Ares. So I want to go over one more scene before I close this out. And that's this scene right here. Now, earlier I said this could be Sam, or this could be, Sam and son and Cora's son, whatever his name would be. But I had another thought. At the end of Legacy, okay, at the very end of Legacy, we saw Tron, the computer program, the good computer program, survive. Okay, we saw him survive. Even after being corrupted by Clue, he was able to come to his senses and basically stop Clue from preventing Kevin and Sam from getting to the portal. And basically, at the very end of it, we saw him float down and basically light up white, indicating that he has somehow survived. Okay. Could this also be Tron? That was something that kind of came to my mind. Could this be Tron right here? That somehow Tron survived the end of Legacy. No, the last we saw Tron, he was floating to the bottom of this endless lake between Clue's forces and the portal. Okay. And basically he was lit up white. Okay, showing that he was now on the side of the users. So at first, when I saw this image, I thought this could be maybe Sam, or maybe Sam and Cora has son, and that's who this is. But could this also be Tron? That's another thing. Could this also be Tron? I have to say, I really enjoyed this trailer. I like what I saw. I thought it was really well done. Um, there's a lot of questions I have, but the trailer whets your appetite. It's not supposed to give you the information. It's supposed to whet your appetite. Okay. And it did, because it interspaced a lot of stuff we saw from Legacy and a lot of stuff we saw from the original Tron in this. Okay. And we got to see the actual view of Jared Leto as Ares. Okay. But yeah, it does come out October 10th. This is one of the movies I'm starting to kind of come around to and starting to watch a little bit more. Okay. Just the way they're doing things, the way they are, presenting everything. They're giving us like little breadcrumbs, and then they drop this on us. And I honestly thought they were going to drop. I honestly thought the best chance of us getting a Tron Ares trailer was going to be at the Super Bowl, but they didn't. They dropped it now. Okay. So, I don't like to give Disney a whole lot of credit. I just don't like doing it. Okay, because Disney has messed so much up. But if they can do this right, I will give them a ton of credit. Okay, I just really hope they do. I really hope they don't take another franchise and nuke it with their nonsense. And I really hope that this is the beginning of them kind of getting away from all that woke nonsense that has been just permeating this company for so long. But yeah, Tron Ares, October 10th. I'm starting to get interested in this. I'm starting to look at it a little bit more. And I think if they can do it right, it'll be a great movie.
Continuing on with this week's TV and movie news segment.
A new trailer for an upcoming series that's going to drop on Star Wars Day, May the 4th. And it is called Star Wars Tales of the Underworld. Now, this series is very unique, and let me explain why it's so unique. So, first off, it's following in the steps of the other Star Wars Tales series. You had Star Wars Tales of the Jedi, or I should say Star Wars Tales of the Jedi, Star Wars Tales of the Empire. So, this is kind of following in that suit. And based on the trailer, what we're going to see is stories of the underworld. The crime syndicates that inhabit Star Wars. Okay. This is also very interesting by the fact that this was an original idea brought forth by George Lucas. Now, let me kind of give you some context. So before George Lucas sold Disney, Lucasfilm, okay? Before he sold Lucasfilm to Disney, okay, he had come up with a treatment for episodes 7, 8, and 9. The movies that would eventually become The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. Instead of having like the Empire as the main bad guy, he had the underworld, the crime syndicates taking on the rebellion and the Republic. Okay. That was the original idea for 7, 8, and 9. But then he sold everything to Disney. And Disney just took that, tossed it in a bin somewhere, and basically created what we know as The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. Okay. Seems like now they're bringing it back. Okay. And from what I saw, we saw a couple of recognizable figures here. So let's take a look at this trailer, and I'll give you some of my thoughts and opinions on it. But this here is the trailer for the upcoming series on Disney Plus, Star Wars Tales of the Underworld.
Shh. Just do as I say. Never can be too cautious with strangers out here. Then again,
Now, already it's looking like we're going to see a bunch of different planets in this series. Okay.
you're no stranger. Lady Ventress.
Now, if you don't recognize who that is, that was Lady Ventress. She was Dooku's apprentice. Okay. She was basically a Sith Lord in training. Okay. She was Dooku's apprentice before he was killed. And we've not seen a whole lot of her for a while now. So I'm kind of anxious to see what's been going on with her.
We got a problem here.
Just saw him right in.
Now, this face right here should be recognizable to anyone. This here is one of the biggest, baddest, if not the biggest, baddest bounty hunter in all of Star Wars, Cad Bane. Okay, the last time we saw him, he was basically getting killed in the Book of Boba Fett, but he is known throughout Star Wars as the top dog when it comes to bounty hunters.
What's the situation?
He was your best friend.
Things have changed. You took everything from me.
So now, I think one of the episodes we're going to get is going to focus on Cad Bane. Because you got to understand something. This is called Tales of the Underworld, okay? It ain't going to just focus on Lady Ventress. It's going to be different stories from the underworld of Star Wars, from the criminal syndicates that roam Star Wars, whether you're talking about during the Republic, during the Empire, during the New Republic, all that. So I think we're going to be getting a whole bunch of different stories. And I think one of them is the reason Cad Bane becomes a bounty hunter. Okay. That's what I'm getting from this so far.
Who are you?
I was Count Dooku's lead assassin. I don't want that life anymore.
Now, this right here is very interesting. And I'm about to do like a conspiracy theory here. I'm really about to do one, okay? Could we be seeing Mara Jade right here? Now, for a while now, we've heard rumors about them wanting to get a Mara Jade Skywalker series off the ground. About before she met Luke Skywalker, her life in the underworld, all that. Okay. Could we be seeing that right here? Okay. Could we be seeing the fact that during the Galactic Civil War, Ventress basically went into hiding and started changing, kind of putting away the Sith and becoming more along the lines of a Jedi. Now, is she a full-on Jedi? No. But she is a Force user, and she knows how to use a lightsaber. And somewhere along the way, she runs afoul of one of these criminal syndicates. And could this be Mara Jade Skywalker, the former Emperor's hand? I know that is conjecture. I know there's no evidence to prove that. But just the fact that they are trying to get a Mara Jade Skywalker series off the ground, and then we see this, just kind of makes me wondering if perhaps we ain't going to see that in this series.
Bane? No one needs to die.
Get them.
So right there, that's kind of telling me that this series will focus on Cad Bane and Ventress, telling stories from both of their worlds, okay? Whereas in the original Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire, it focused on different people throughout the history of Star Wars. This one, I think, is going to focus on Bane and Ventress, based on what I'm seeing in the trailer. Now, that could change. That could be completely wrong. But from what I'm seeing in this trailer, it looks like this series is mainly going to focus on Ventress and Bane.
You're gonna pay for what you did.
This revenge. I hope it was worth it. It will be.
Another thing I've also noticed here is that if you look at Cad Bane here, okay, he don't have the breathing apparatus on, okay? So I'm kind of wondering if perhaps in one of the episodes we see him get the breathing apparatus, okay? Because in the Boba Fett series, as well as throughout Star Wars, we saw him having this breathing apparatus, okay? But here, it ain't on there. We don't see the breathing apparatus. So I'm kind of wondering if perhaps we don't get that story of how he got hurt so bad that he had to have a special breathing apparatus. Now, that right there should tell you all you need to know. All right, so let me go back and show you. So it's going to be original shorts, and they're going to be available May the 4th. Now, that's Star Wars Day, okay? Now, what this means is that these shorts will be around 15 to 10 minutes long, okay? That's the way it was for Tales of the Jedi. That's the way it was for Tales of the Empire, okay? Let me just conclude with this. All right, this looks really good, okay? I'm very interested to see this because I have to wonder if we ain't getting maybe a cameo from Mara Jade. We're going to finally get to see how Cad Bane got started. And we're going to get to know more about what happened with Ventress after she disappeared. You know, we're going to get to know more about Ventress. Now, I am concerned by the fact that they might be changing lore here. Okay? Because the last time we saw Ventress was in the Clone Wars, where she helped Ahsoka Tano clear her name. All right. But later on in a book called Dark Disciple, she died, bringing another Jedi back to the light. Okay. So we're going to get one or two things here. The Ventress stories are either going to happen in between that time when she left Ahsoka Tano until she dies, or they're changing lore and they're going to say that Ventress did not die bringing Vox back to the light in Dark Disciple, but that she somehow survived and lived on. Okay. And I could not really tell here. Okay. We saw the Empire uniforms and her stories and all that, but it didn't really tell what path they're going to take. All right. So this right here could either indicate that we are going to see just another Night Sister. Okay. If they are going to stick with the storyline of Ventress that was ended in Dark Disciple, the book, then we could just be seeing another Night Sister, or we could be seeing Mary J. Skywalker. Either one is possible. You know, we had, so right here, we could be seeing the Inquisitors, or we could be seeing the first viewing of Mary J. Skywalker in Star Wars. I know that's hopeful thinking that this is probably just another Night Sister, or I should say Inquisitor, but I do have a feeling that we could be looking at the Emperor's hand, Mary J. Skywalker. Okay. But yeah, that was Star Wars Tales of the Underworld. It's going to be dropping on May the 4th, Star Wars Day. By the looks of it, they're dropping all of the original shorts on the same day. So it won't be like a weekly thing. They're all going to drop them on the same day, same time, all that.
Continuing on with this week's TV and movie news segment.
So I'm going to end off this TV and movie news segment with some bad news. And I hate doing this, but we're going to end it off like this. And that is that Val Kilmer has died. Now, I, like most people, remember Val Kilmer for Tombstone, Heat. Another movie I know him from is The Saint, 1997, as Simon Templar. He was an Iceman as in Top Gun, you know, not only in the original Top Gun, but the more recent Top Gun Maverick. This here is his IMDb page, and you know, he's got a couple of them on here. Let's see if I recognize any of them. Let's see here. All right. Life's Too Short, Breathless, Seven Below. I don't ever remember. Okay, that was a video game. He played Dr. Walker Sloan in Spider-Man Edge of Time. Let's see here. He played in MacGruber as Kunith. He did The Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans as Steve Pruitt. He was in the Knight Rider series, which was in 2008, 2009 as Kit. This was the remake a couple of years ago. Let's see what else he was in. Let's see here. He played as Mason Lancer in Numbers. I don't remember who that was. I loved Numbers at one point, so he was only in one episode, but still. Let's see. He was in Mindhunters. He played in Spartan. He was in Red Planet. I remember him in Red Planet as the astronaut who got basically abandoned on Mars. Now there was a couple of Mars movies at that same time. You had Red Planet, you had The Martian, and you had another one. I can't think of the name of it right now. Red Planet was the more action-oriented one. And it was basically his ship basically crash landed on Mars, and his robot assistant basically goes crazy, and he has to kind of try and fight it to survive. He played as Moses in The Prince of Egypt. Now that is a great movie. Let's see here. He played in Heat. You know, that whole entire battle scene in Heat should be, if it ain't, should be viewed on how to do a shootout in movies. Okay. So yeah, he's gonna be, he played as Doc Holliday in Tombstone. I don't think there's anyone out there who, when they first heard this news of his death, that they didn't instantly think of Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Okay. He played in Batman Forever as Bruce Wayne. He played in Willow. I've never seen Willow, so obviously he played in Top Gun. Real Genius, another one. The whole scene where they use the laser to create a big old room full of popcorn. I mean, yeah. I mean, now he died from pneumonia, but for a long time he had been fighting basically throat cancer. And I do believe, I can't be 100% about this, but I do believe that he had at least either beaten it or had put it in like remission. And so when he did Maverick, he talked, his voice was basically gone, but he talked. And even with throat cancer, okay, he still had that look of Iceman from the original Top Gun, okay? From the original Top Gun, he had that basically that aura of Iceman, okay? Whenever I hear about these actors dying, I have to kind of ask myself, who's going to take their shoes? Who's going to pick up the baton of the next generation? And I don't really see anyone doing that, There's a few out there. But every time I hear about one of these legendary actors dying, I'm just thinking that more and more Hollywood is going away. The Hollywood that we grew up with, the cool Hollywood, the Hollywood that wasn't so wrapped up in controversy or, scandals, or the Hollywood that knew its place to make entertainment, not to put forth some type of ideological nonsense, but knew its place to just make us good movies. And I'm seeing more and more of that Hollywood kind of just disappear and become something else. And whenever you hear about another legendary actor like Val Kilmer dying, it's just one more time, one more piece of that old Hollywood that knew how to entertain us, knew what we wanted, gave us not only what we wanted, but what we needed. And basically, honestly, it feels like just another piece of my childhood going away, because I remember Top Gun. Top Gun was one of the coolest movies I ever saw. Tombstone, Batman Forever, Heat. These were great films by a great actor, and now he's gone. And I just feel like it's just one more piece of Hollywood that I grew up with gone away, and there ain't no one to replace it.
Now, moving on from the world of TV and movies, let's look at what happened this week in the world of video games.
So, this past week, Nintendo dropped a ton of gaming news on us. First off, they talked about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, the next game in the Metroid Prime series. Okay. And then they did their whole Nintendo Direct, which is their direct-to-consumer showcase, which basically talked about a whole bunch of games. It talked about the Nintendo Switch 2 and all this other stuff. But we're first going to focus on the first big news story that happened with Nintendo, and that is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond dropped a new trailer. Now, I am not very familiar with the Metroid Prime games. The last Metroid game I ever played was Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo. Okay, that was the last time I played a Metroid game. So as far as knowing the lore and all that stuff, I'm kind of just playing it by ear, by what I'm seeing on streams and what I'm hearing on the internet. Like, I'm really not that too deep into the lore of Metroid Prime. Okay. I do know it follows the original character from the Metroid game, Samus Aran, as she fights Metroids and goes to these other planets, and that it's almost like a Castlevania or original Metroidvania, what they call Metroidvania, which is basically an open world type of game where you can go into one level and come out the other, and you collect like upgrades and ammo and life bars and that sort of thing. Okay. So as far as knowing like the precise lore of the Metroid games, I'll just be honest with you. I'm not all that in to the lore. Okay. But let's check out the trailer and I'll give you some of my thoughts and opinions on it. But this here is the trailer for the upcoming game, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. That right there reminds me of Super Metroid. That ship, you know what I'm saying? Now, from what I remember, Samus was a bounty hunter who would do missions for the Galactic Federation, stopping Metroids, out of control robots, you name it. Okay. But the way at least the way the original game started was you would fly down in a ship and she would jump out. Okay, that's the way the Super Metroid I remember started. Okay, so already they're going back to nostalgia in that sense. And that right there, that music, already taking me back. Okay, already taking me back to not only Super Metroid, but the original Metroid game on the NES. Those long nights of like graphing out. I didn't use graph paper. I used normal notebook paper. But you would basically graph out the map of the game. Where did this area go to? Where did that area go to? You know, all that stuff. Now, this I do know is that instead of it being a kind of like a side scroller or a third person action game, this is going to be a first person game. And I do believe that the other Metroid Prime games were like that. Okay. So they're not straying too far on that front. Now, this right here is important because one of her main enemies are space pirates who are trying to collect Metroids and just raiding the Galactic Federation for whatever resources they can. And she goes back to scanning them again. And from what I understand from the Prime series, when you scan something, you learn its weaknesses. Now, this is very interesting to me because I remember a while back there was a Metroid Prime game, and one of the trailers showed a Dark Samus. And I'm kind of wondering if that's what we're seeing here. A Dark Samus and an evil copy of Samus Aran, who's the hero in this game. And there you see the two Metroids behind her. And I'm just kind of wondering if that's what's going on here. That somehow, some way, Dark Samus, like I said before, I'm not really into the Prime games. If somehow, some way, Dark Samus hasn't returned. And I do have to admit, if this is Switch 2, because the Metroid game is going to be on the Switch 2. If this is Switch 2 graphics, they look great. Okay, they look great already. And that right there was the trailer for Metroid Prime Beyond. So that right there was the trailer for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I do have a couple of questions. First off, one of the things we know about the Switch 2 is that it's going to act like a mouse, that the Joy-Cons are going to be different in that one you will hold normally and the other one you can operate like a mouse. I'm wondering if that ability is going to be in this game or if they're just going to go back to the original Joy-Con situation where it's one you move the character and the other you point the screen and you fire, that sort of thing. Okay. Because I think that if they did do that, okay, if they did incorporate that idea of one Joy-Con where you move, the other you operate like a mouse, if that option was in the game. Now, obviously, I would want both options, the original Joy-Con version as well as the new Joy-Con and mouse version. But if they did incorporate both of those, I think that would be incredible. I think that would draw in a lot of people who are coming over from PC who want that option in, say, PlayStation or Xbox. And I do think that it can open the door for that. You know, not a whole lot of games allow you to do that on the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox, or I don't even think PlayStation 5 or the new Xbox does that. But if they did that on the Switch 2, okay, where one Joy-Con operates like a mouse and the other operates just like a normal Joy-Con, I think that could open the door to the other, games doing that. Okay, the other systems doing that. Okay, and I really do hope they do give you that option. I liked what I saw in terms, just being from a shooter fan. I'm a real big fan of first-person shooters. Just being what I saw from here, I really liked it. They gave you enough to tease you, but not too much to reveal the story. Okay, and they did say 2025, but they did not give a specific date. So I'm kind of wondering if perhaps it's going to come out this Christmas. But yeah, that was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. It is coming out 2025. Now, this here says Nintendo Switch, but I have heard that it could be a Switch 2 title. I have heard that the Switch is coming out in June, and we're going to talk about more of that here in a little bit. But I don't think it'll be a Switch 2 launch title. I think they're going to wait until Christmas. All right. I think they'll wait until the Christmas holiday before they drop Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I liked what I saw. I thought it was real good. Okay. It gave you enough to tease you, but not enough to reveal the story. It's just I'm not very familiar with the Metroid Prime lore because it's been so long since I've played a Metroid game. But from a shooter standpoint, I liked what I saw. It looked interesting. And to be truthfully honest, it's games like this and other announcements later on that are making me look at the Switch 2 and kind of wonder, should I jump ship from PlayStation and go to Switch 2? Or should I just stay with PlayStation? Okay. Now, there also are some big hurdles that I'm going to talk about as well with that situation. But as far as staying with PlayStation and perhaps jumping to Switch, I will be the first one to admit that Nintendo Switch 2 is doing some things that are giving me real consideration on whether or not I should stick with the PlayStation, Xbox, or perhaps jump over to Switch.
Let's continue on with our gaming news segment.
So moving on with our gaming news. This past week, Nintendo did their Nintendo Direct. If you don't know what this is, basically it's a direct-to-consumer showcase of what's all coming to Nintendo. Now, the main focus of this was the Nintendo Switch 2. And there were some big announcements from the Nintendo Direct about games and about overall what's coming to Nintendo, whether you're talking about the Switch 2 or just some of the games that are coming. And one of the big announcements that came out of the Nintendo Direct was a new Zelda game titled Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Now, from the title alone, we can maybe ascertain that this will not focus on Link. So I'm thinking this is going to focus on one of the other characters from the Legend of Zelda series, probably Zelda herself. Okay, so I'm thinking that maybe this is going to be more of a Zelda title focused on Zelda than a Legend of Zelda focused on Link. Now, do I think he'll be in this? Yes. I think in some way, shape, or form, he will show up in Hyrule Warriors. Okay. But let's take a look at the trailer, and I'll just give you some of my overall thoughts and opinions on what I'm seeing in here. But just from the title alone, I could probably guess that this will not focus on Link, but rather an adventure with Zelda. And I just want to say off bat that I'm also not very familiar with the Zelda lore. It's been a really long time since I played a Zelda game. Not since A Link to the Past, which was on the Super Nintendo, have I played a Zelda game. Okay. A Legend of Zelda game. So just keep that in mind, okay?
When the Zonai, who descended from the heavens, joined hands with the Hylians, who dwelled on the surface, their union led to a great and prosperous kingdom. But in time, a terrible evil arose.
Now, that right there looks like Ganondorf. Okay. So I think that's supposed to symbolize Ganondorf right there. Okay.
A war was fought to vanquish this evil, one which future generations would call the Imprisoning War.
Perhaps you truly have traveled back in time.
And you notice you're not seeing Zelda a whole lot. I mean, you're not seeing Link. Okay. You'll notice you're not seeing a whole lot of Link in this, but you're seeing more of Zelda than Link. This will probably focus more on Zelda than Link. Okay. That this is going to focus more on Zelda, Princess Zelda, somehow going backwards in time than will Link fighting Ganondorf.
So that's Hyrule Castle? Then that must...
So this is meant to be a prequel to Tears of the Kingdom. Okay. Which were big Legend of Zelda games, I remember. Okay. But this is meant to be a prequel to Tears of the Kingdom.
I mean, this really is the past.
Now, that whole scene right there, and I'm going to show it again because I want you to see that whole thing right there. Okay. Now, that whole scene right there, I really got a Dynasty Warriors type of vibe from it, just by the way it was shot, the way it looked. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe they're getting away from the old formula of the Legend of Zelda games that we know and are going towards more of a formula of Dynasty Warriors where you choose your hero and you just go out and fight war. Okay. Where each hero has their own like unique abilities. Okay. That's the feeling I'm getting right now, that they're going more for more of a Dynasty Warriors type of game than they are a Legend of Zelda, like a traditional Legend of Zelda game. That's the feeling I'm getting. See right there, that scene right there, it reminds me of Dynasty Warriors. I'm kind of wondering, is this some type of character select screen where you choose your hero and you basically go out and conquer and fight against the darkness? Okay, so I'm kind of wondering if that's what we're seeing here. That each one of these characters are going to have some type of special ability, and that either you play each one of these throughout the entire story, or you choose one to play the whole entire game through. And it says right there, coming this winter. So this will probably be another Christmas release. I'm probably thinking this and Prime 4 will be Christmas releases. But yeah, that was the trailer for Hyrule Warriors: Age of Imprisonment. So let me say this. What they've done here is very interesting. Okay. They've really done something special here. I really think so. Okay. The Dynasty Warriors thing, like, it felt in certain parts of this trailer like this was more of a Dynasty Warriors type of game than a Legend of Zelda game. Okay. And you notice it doesn't say Legend of Zelda Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Okay. So I'm kind of wondering if this is going to be kind of like a side story for Zelda going forward. Okay. Where Legend of Zelda will focus on Link trying to save Zelda, getting the Triforce, all that. And then you have Hyrule Warriors, which will focus on the different battles throughout Hyrule history that will affect what happens in the Legend of Zelda games. Okay. That was Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment. I mean, I really don't know what I think of this right now. Okay. But I really don't know what to think of this. Just being an old school, like Legend of Zelda Link to the Past person. I mean, it looks good, and I hope it has a good story, but the whole Dynasty Warriors aspect of it, I'm worried that we're going to lose something from the Legend of Zelda series. Okay, that's my main concern. But yeah, that was Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Hopefully, we'll get better trailers that showcase more of what to expect in this. And, I hope it does well. Being a Nintendo Switch 2 game, I hope it does well. And I hope it is something that will draw people to the Switch 2. But, I mean, until I know more information, I can't really say whether or not this really gets me to want to buy a Switch 2. To be perfectly honest, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond made me want to buy a Switch 2 more than Hyrule Warriors does. Okay. Maybe that's just because of the way it looks. Maybe it's because I'm not really a RPG type of person, or maybe it's just because I haven't played Legend of Zelda in so long. Okay. But really, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond scratched more of an itch with me than Hyrule Warriors did.
Let's continue on with our gaming news segment.
Now, there were a couple of other announcements that have come out of the Nintendo Direct. The first one is Project 007. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of information that came out of the Nintendo Direct about Project 007, except that more will be revealed later on. Now, obviously, this is a James Bond game. But I'm kind of wondering if they're going to try and do a remake of GoldenEye again. Okay, with updated graphics, updated visuals, that sort of thing. Or if they're going to go the route, which I hope they're going, and they're going to create some type of separate James Bond story, okay, that kind of links into the mythos of James Bond. I'm really hoping they do that, okay, that they don't try to do another remake of, say, Skyfall or Casino Royale or something else, but an entirely original story for the Nintendo Switch 2, okay? That's what I'm hoping for, okay? Now, look, if they did a updated, proper remake of GoldenEye, I think a lot of people would say, yeah, cool, okay. But I think what they really need to do with the franchise, with the 007 franchise, is to do a separate story, okay, that focuses on James Bond. Maybe it focuses on James Bond just as he gets his 007 rating, okay? Or maybe it focuses on James Bond getting his 007 rating, okay? A game that's not just about shooting, but also about stealth, that mixes those different aspects of being the world's greatest spy together, okay? Of not only being able to hack and gather intelligence and assassinate people, but also just being able to be the world's greatest spy that we all know and love. I think that if this was a prequel to the movies, if this was somehow a way that James Bond, like this mission, James Bond gets his 007 rating, I think that would be awesome. It would add so much. I think it would open up so many options for the mythos of James Bond. Okay, especially if they made it official lore in the James Bond universe, like the movies and stuff. But yeah, I really now look, if they do another remake, fine. Okay, I mean, no one really blame them. Okay, some of the best James Bond games have been on Nintendo, but if they really wanted to kind of up the ante on things, they would do an entirely original James Bond story that focuses on perhaps him getting his 007 rating. And I think that might be what they're doing because they call it Project 007. Okay. They didn't call it Project anything else. They didn't call it Project James Bond or anything. But they called it Project 007. So I'm kind of wondering if perhaps maybe they ain't going down that route. Okay. That perhaps what we are getting is some type of original story focused on James Bond. Okay, where either he gets his 007 rating or perhaps it talks about him going after Spectre and Blofeld and some of the other characters that we know from the James Bond mythos. Okay, so I'm kind of wondering if that's the direction they're going in. An original story in the James Bond universe, not some remake like GoldenEye. And then the really big news I saw from the Nintendo Switch 2 was the announcement of Cyberpunk 2077. Now, based on the trailer I saw, okay, what I saw from the Cyberpunk 2077 trailer, it honestly was the biggest draw for me in terms of buying a Switch 2. Because I absolutely love Cyberpunk 2077. But I can't play the Ultimate Edition, which includes the Phantom Liberty DLC, because I have a PS4 still. So as someone who has not transferred over into the PS5, who has not got a new Xbox, who's looking at Nintendo, seeing a Cyberpunk 2077 game come to the Nintendo Switch 2, is just another reason to look at the Nintendo Switch. Okay? So out of this Nintendo Direct, I saw two reasons to buy the Nintendo Switch. I saw Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition, which by all accounts will include the Phantom Liberty DLC. And I saw the Metroid Prime 4 Beyond trailer. Okay? Those were the two biggest reasons to buy a Nintendo Switch 2. I'm apprehensive on the Hyrule trailer so far. Okay? And there will be other things that I'll talk about later on. But yeah, seeing Cyberpunk 2077 come to Nintendo Switch 2 is just awesome, man. Okay? And it's another reason to look at Nintendo Switch 2 as a console to transfer over to. All right? So, you know what? I'm going to show y'all the trailer. And it's not a very long trailer. It doesn't really show you a whole lot except gameplay that we've all seen before and stuff. But I'm going to show you the trailer and I'm going to just give you some of my thoughts on it.
Hello, my name is Adam Badowski from CD Projekt Red. We are delighted to bring the immersive world of the dark future to Nintendo players for the first time. Cyberpunk 2077 is an open-world action-adventure RPG set in Night City. Thanks to the power and new features of Nintendo Switch 2, you can transport yourself to the City of Dreams at home or on the go. Get ready to meet incredible characters and discover amazing stories when Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition comes to Nintendo Switch 2 in 2025.
So that right there was the trailer for Cyberpunk 2077 Nintendo Switch 2 Ultimate Edition. Look, I really don't hope they don't tone down anything. You know, there was some intense violence in Cyberpunk, a lot of controversy surrounding Cyberpunk on what they showed and everything. I really hope they don't tone that down because Nintendo really needs games that are tailored more to grown-ups than they do to kids. Don't get me wrong, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, great games. But those are for all ages. We need something that is more tailored to adults than it is to kids, okay? And that's not to put down Nintendo or anything like that. But let's just look at the facts here. Mario Kart, Smash Brothers. You can even go as far as Legend of Zelda. Really are tailored more to younger people. Okay, maybe not kids, but younger people. Cyberpunk absolutely is tailored more to adult gamers than it is to younger gamers. Okay, that's just the way it is. All right, and I really do think that the Nintendo Switch 2 does need something like Cyberpunk 2077 on the console, and the fact that it will be a launch title, it's just icing on the cake. Okay, this is coming out June 5th. I bet you that it will be a major download content. Content wise, it'll be majorly downloaded, bought, whatever. But my one fear is that they're going to tone down a lot of the stuff. That we're going to lose out on a lot of the stuff that we saw on the PlayStation version, on the PlayStation 5 version, and all that. That's what really concerns me. Okay, and I really do hope that is not the case. Okay, that they keep everything as is, that it's just a straight port over with maybe some enhanced graphics and some tweaks here and there. But I really don't want them to tone down anything story-wise. So, what else was announced at the Nintendo Direct? There were a lot of games that were announced there, and I talked about a few of them. But now let's talk about the Big Daddy, the Nintendo Switch 2. So this over here is coming from MSNBC and it's coming from USA Today. And first off, the Nintendo Switch will be released on June 5th. Now, this is the Switch 2, okay? It will be released on June the 5th. All right. Good date to release a game. I mean, it's the beginning of summer. There are kids who are going to be out and about. You don't have to worry about the Christmas rush. And plus, it kind of gives people time to see what games are coming out, what the Switch 2 is going to be like, all that. But then we start running into some problems. And the first one is right here. The Switch 2 will have a $449.99 price tag. Okay, which is almost $300 more than the original Switch. Okay. And it's actually $100 more than the Switch OLED edition. Okay. Now, this is where I have a problem. Okay. First off, okay, I don't really have a problem with a console costing $400-something. It's just the fact that the Switch 2 is not the big consoles, okay? If this was back in the old days, okay, where Nintendo was like the top dog, okay, then I could maybe perhaps accept that. But when you have a $449 price tag, okay, and then on top of that, you have taxes, which will probably come out to around $500, okay, the advantages of having a Switch 2 don't outweigh the advantages of buying a PlayStation 5. I can sit there and buy a PlayStation 5 for $100 more and perhaps get more games tuned to my likes than a Switch 2. So if they're going to give you that price, they have to really add some value to that, to the console, okay? And that's what I'm saying, is that I loved Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, the trailer. Hyrule Warriors was an okay trailer. Okay, it was an okay trailer. Let's just be honest with ourselves. All right. I know there's going to be Legend of Zelda fans who are going to freak out about it, but Hyrule Warriors was an okay trailer. And seeing Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch 2 was awesome. Okay. And it opens up so many possibilities of what the Joy-Cons can do in that world. Okay. But it still ain't enough value for $500 because that's how much it's going to cost with taxes. All right. Let's just be honest. $449 price tag plus taxes will probably come out to around $500. Okay. Let's just be honest with ourselves. That's how much the Switch 2 is really going to cost. right around $500 at launch. Now, hopefully, by the time Christmas rolls around, they will drop that down so that way people during the Christmas holiday can get it for a sale. Okay, I'm hoping that's what they do. That they release it in June, they wait, and then when Christmas rolls around, they drop the price on it. Here's something that does add value to it, and it says the Joy-Cons have been redesigned to attach magnetically to the Switch 2. And they can also be used like a mouse by sliding on a surface. I think that opens up a ton of possibilities for Switch 2 games. In particular, games like Civilization, Cyberpunk, and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. But here's the question. Will games take advantage of that new ability? Okay. Will the games be able to take advantage of it? It's all well and good to have it built into the console. But will the games at launch be able to take advantage of it? Now, one of the biggest things we saw leading up to the Nintendo Direct was the C button that they included in the new Nintendo Switch 2, which we now know is called Game Chat. Okay. And basically, it accesses a chat menu that you can communicate up to 12 other people. Okay. And if you have a USB-C camera connected, players can also appear on screen, use it more as a video chat. Okay, again, good thing to have in Nintendo Switch 2. The question is, will games be taking advantage of it? What games will be taking advantage of it at the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2? Are we going to see a game like Civilization 7, which we know is coming to the Switch 2? Are they going to take advantage of that? It's all well and good to have it attached to the console, but what games specifically are going to be taking advantage of these new options? The game chat, the using the Joy-Con as a mouse situation. Okay, what games specifically are going to be taking advantage of that? They haven't really told us. And then this did not happen at the Switch 2 Nintendo Direct. Okay, this was announced afterwards. Okay. And I really do think it is a big cross against Nintendo Switch 2 of even getting it, okay? And it's a pretty big one, okay? And I'm going to explain why, because this has kind of broken the gaming community up into different areas where some are saying, okay, this was bound to happen, prices are going up, blah, blah, blah. And the other area are saying, hey, hold on a minute, we're playing these games. And on top of that, we've got DLC and microtransactions and all that. Okay? So why should we do that? It's this right here. And if I can ever get it, I'll show you. This right here. Nintendo Switch 2 games will be $80. Now understand something. The highest game, and I'm talking about this is talking about the base game. Okay? $80 for the base game. So far, they're saying it's for Mario Kart World only. All right. But this is just going to open up a floodgate. Okay. Already, we've seen Call of Duty come out to $70, $75 with tax. Okay. This was Call of Duty Black Ops 6. All right. But now you're talking $80. So let me kind of just give you my personal opinion on this, all right? So first off, I remember a time when games costed $80. Okay? And this was a long time ago where they would cost like $80. But things have changed between now and then, okay? Back then, gaming was for a select group of people. Okay, gaming what attracted a select group of people to play them. Okay, nowadays, gaming is as part of pop culture as movies or TVs or books. Okay, it's that simple. Okay, this ain't still the days of where gaming was for a small niche audience. Gaming has since grown from those days to become as big of pop culture as anything. Okay? This is not like what it used to be. Okay? And the whole reason behind that was because games costed $60. Okay? Now look, I can understand games increasing in price a little bit. I'm not stupid. I know it takes artists and programmers and testers and people, fiddling with this and that in the games to really get the games where they need to be to make money. Okay? And I know how hard it is to make a successful game. Okay? I am not stupid. Okay? And so I am open to some price increases as long as there's value to it. Nowadays, you pay $80 for a game, and in 6 months there's a DLC you have to buy for $20, not including the microtransactions, which can range between $10 and $20. Okay? And we all know that's probably going to happen with Mario Kart World. That somehow, some way, they're going to have you paying for the Legend of Zelda pack or something along those lines for Mario Kart World, okay? Something where you'll have to pay an extra $10 for certain tracks or $10 for, cosmetics or whatnot, all right? I mean, it's just out there, okay? Back in the old days, when you paid $80 for a game, you didn't have to worry about downloadable content. You didn't have to worry about whether or not a game was going to come out broken and you had to wait 24 hours to download an update for it. You could just put it into your system and play it and not have to worry. Nowadays, you have to worry about that stuff. You have to worry about whether or not I'm going to download an update that's going to take 12 hours to download or something. Or if I'm going to have to worry about if my friends are going to have the DLC, how much the downloadable content is going to cost. I can accept some price increase, okay? I really can, okay? I may not like it, but I can live with it. I mean, I can live with some price increase. But $80, no, I can't live with that, okay? Now, look, if this is $80 and it includes the DLC at launch, and then after it launch, maybe a month after launch, they drop that price down, but doesn't include DLC, fine. Okay? But $80 for a game that in 6 months you're going to buy a DLC for, probably have to want to buy microtransactions for. Really, it just seems to me a whole lot greedy. Okay? Really does seem greedy to me. Okay. And like I said before, if this does include like DLC or some type of extra content, okay, then fine. Okay, I can live with that if there's extra content, but just for the base game of Mario Kart World, no. Okay. And and I know that once one does it, the others are going to do it. If they see it to be as successful as it is, then you're going to see PlayStation. You're going to see Xbox start doing it. You'll start seeing PC games online start doing it. And it's just going to open the floodgates. Okay? And what it's going to do is I'm really scared that it's going to cause a crash. Because people are not going to want to pay $80 for an unfinished product. Okay? And I'm not saying Mario Kart World is unfinished, okay? But after Mario Kart World, there are going to be games that cost $80 that will not be finished. Okay? And people are not going to want to pay $80 for something you got to download content for 6 months later and pay $20 for. Okay? It just ain't going to happen. Now, look, maybe I'm wrong about this. I am full on admitting that I could be wrong about this. Okay? But I think having even one game at $80 is a mistake. Look, I can understand if a launch game is maybe $70. If it's a launch game and it's $70, fine. Okay. If it doesn't include DLC, fine. And if this $80 does include DLC, like later on down the road, where you don't have to buy any DLC for maybe the first season or something. I can accept that even, okay? Because I know it does take time and energy to make all this extra content for these games, okay? But sitting there and saying just for the base game, $80, and then on top of that, you want to go and play Nintendo Switch 2. So not only do you have to pay $500 actually for the Nintendo Switch 2, but on top of that, you maybe have to pay $80 for Mario Kart World. And I can tell you right now, that ain't going to be the only game that's $80. There are going to be others at $80. I would not be surprised if Metro Prime 4 Beyond is $80, or if Legend of Zelda Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is $80. I am seriously worried that this could possibly lead to some type of crash where they price these games so high that people who normally play them can't play them anymore. Because let me tell you something, that $80, I could probably buy food for about a week with that. Okay. I literally could probably buy food for about a week with that. Maybe a little bit longer if I stretch it out. And you're asking me to buy a game that probably in 6 months to not even that, maybe 3 months, we'll have to buy DLC for, which is probably going to be an extra $10 to $20. That's not including if there's microtransactions and whatnot. So, yeah, I think if this includes like the DLC, if this includes maybe season 1 of the DLC, and you guarantee, okay, we're going to give you 5 extra maps for $80. I can live with that, okay, because it includes DLC, maybe some maybe some skins and whatnot. I can live with that. But just for the base game, $80, no. I think this is a mistake. I think it's going to open the floodgates, and I really do think that with this combined with everything else that's going on in the gaming industry, really has got me concerned that we could be looking at some type of crash like we had back in the 90s. Ladies and gentlemen, that was your Geek Report for the week of March 31st through April 7th of 2025. To kind of look back what we talked about, we started off in our TV and movie news segment, and we talked about the new Tron Ares trailer. I gave you some of my thoughts on it. We took a look at it, and overall, just my overall impressions of it. Then we moved on to Star Wars, and we got a Tales of the Underworld trailer. This is going to be a series of many, I guess you call it episodes, detailing the underworld of Star Wars, the criminal organizations of Star Wars, the bounty hunters of Star Wars. I gave you some of my overall thoughts and opinions on this. And then we ended our TV and movie news with some sad news that Val Kilmer has died. He played a lot of famous roles. The most famous, I personally think, was as Doc Holliday in the Tombstone movie. But he also was known as Iceman in the Top Gun movies, and he also played Batman in Batman Forever. So we kind of talked about him dying and just overall his legacy. And then we moved on into our gaming news, and it was all Nintendo news. Most of it coming from the Nintendo Direct, but some of it coming before and after. We talked about the new Metroid Prime 4 Beyond trailer. We talked about Hyrule Age of Imprisonment trailer. We talked about the new Project 007 coming to Nintendo Switch 2. We talked about Cyberpunk 2077 coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. We also got an official release date for the Nintendo Switch 2, which is going to be on June 5th of 2025. But then we talked about the bad news, which was that at least one of the games will be $80, and what I thought of this. So everyone, that was your Geek Report for the week of March 31st through April 7th of 2025. I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are staying safe and staying healthy. Check out some of my other video sites as well as my social media. I will see you guys in the next video and in the next stream. Laters.
Thank you for watching this week's Geek Report. I hope you enjoyed it. Please check out my other video sites as well as my social media. And if you can please, leave a like and a comment on this video. We will see you guys in the next video and the next stream. Laters.